So now that I have this all drawn out, I am going to review this, and when I'm going to look and make sure that all of my shapes that I've drawn are closed. And I see that here in the ear, I've got a shape that is open. In other words, it's just lines. So I have not finished this shape in here or this shape in here. So I'm going to draw those in with pencil, and then I'm going to create that as a shape as well by looking at this edge of the ear and again squinting. I'm going to paint all of that in one value, and I'm just going to move that down to here, move that around here, and then describe her ear that way. I may change this when I look at it again later, because I'm not sure that, even though the photo looks like that, I can't swear that that's what an ear looks like. So I'm going to have to look and see. I think it might be more, because this is what an ear should look like, and then I'm not quite sure what that light area in there is. So I'm going to just put that in there, but I'm going to consider whether or not I'm going to include that, and I'm going to look at that again when I transfer it to the watercolor paper, or before I transfer it to the watercolor paper, I can make that editing decision again. So I'm putting in the little balls and then, part of her earrings. I'm going to describe the contour of that lobe and the value structure that I see in there. I'm going to leave all of that one value there. That is now closed. That's closed in there. I think I'm going to break that down to one more shape, and I feel fairly comfortable with that for my shapes. Looking here, all of that is going to be one shape, one value that comes back down around here. I think I'm going to separate this one out through here and close that shape off, because looking over here, I can see that that could be a closed shape, and all of that could be one value, and it does move up underneath her glasses. It looks like I can put one more shape in here to describe that shadow underneath her glasses. And so I've got that in there now. Just looking, comparing it to that other printed out photo that I have there. Looks like I have not decided which direction to take this, so I think I'm going to take it back to, maybe this low, and that looks like the direction I want to take it. And then looking at all of these are closed shapes. This is all going to be one value in through here. This is going to be a mid-tone, and let's see if this moves up there. This is light. This moves around this direction. This is darker. I think I should connect these. Just make that connect there. And then take that all that direction. Then this is, it looks like I want to close this in here. So I can paint I think I want to close this. So and paint all of that one value. I put that in and that may all be one value. So I think I like it if it wraps this direction, and I'm going to include it in with that instead. Okay, so I like that a little better. This, I see a slight shift in value in through here, and I want to describe just a little bit more tone in her nose. I have this dark shape in here. I think I have this coming up this direction to describe some of her nose, and I think I can, so I've got that highlight in there, and I feel I can put one more highlight in through here just to give a little bit more depth to her nose, bring it a little forward, and I have that closed. That's closed off. That is all going to be one value. I think I can take this, change that just a little, make it a little, elongate it just a little more, and that's all going to be one value. I think I would like to take this up this direction and make that just a little bit more fun for myself to describe. That is the top of that shape, and then I'm going to take that there and leave that little formation on the side of her face. That is a closed shape. I think I'm going to extend this shape all the way over to here, and I think I'm ready to trace this now. This is going to be my 5 value. I think I've gone into 7 value. I think if you remember the instruction before, if you find yourself wanting to go all the way up to 7 values or 8 or 9 values, that would be okay. I've just seen one more area that I could isolate, and that is that little piece of her glasses over here, that little nose bridge where it is. I think it's doing a reflection in through there, and so I wanted to complete that shape. All right, so back to without being distracted, I hope, without further distractions. We had talked about like going up to, if you wanted to with this project, really pushing it to 9 values, but you want to make sure you don't do any blending with this project. So don't think about blending, and you're just going to follow the values in your shapes. And just like our step value chart, each shape is going to be painted its own value. With organic lines, those are going to be irregular and unpredictable, and so I'm just going to follow that. These lines are fairly organic. Where I feel they get a little geometric, I might add a little bit more irregularity to those lines. So the reason, if you remember, that we're tracing it in marker is because we need to transfer it to our watercolor paper, and in order to do that, we need to be able to see the lines that we've drawn for our shapes. And we can't just see those with pencil because all of the ink from the print interferes with our ability to see because it's too dense, it's too opaque, it's not transparent enough. So when you look at it with a light behind it, just having a pencil is not enough. Having the big dark lines of the marker, that's what you want to do. So when you do your transfer, you want to make sure that you transfer only the lines. What I found a couple of my students doing was they thought it was going to be helpful to further tone that in. But remember, the idea that we're trying to get from this is to get rid of all the tones and just all of the details, just leave the shapes that we selected. So we should have enough confidence in our shapes that we can trace our shapes out now and have absolutely no need to go in and add the tone. So don't go in and shade with a pencil after you've outlined your shapes with a marker. You'll be able to refer to this when you're doing your painting. You'll be able to refer to the outline you've made, and you can refer to your printout. You can also, if once you get into doing your painting, you can pull it up digitally, either on a laptop or whatever device you use to access your digital photos. You can access it that way and look at details that way and help you understand your, like what you were, the planes you were seeing and why you selected the details that you selected. So moving and just following that line and being okay with embracing the irregularity of it, because that's the idea behind organic lines. And you see I've got a paper towel underneath my hand, and that's just because I always want to make sure I'm not transferring lotion or just the regular oils that exist in a human hand onto my paper, because this, I'm getting distracted by the tracing, by the actual focus I need to do sometimes on the work. So by transferring the oil to the hand, you can lift some of that ink, and we don't want to do that and get it smudged around. And it's just a good practice whenever your hand comes into contact with the paper that you're working on for art, to have that nice little barrier between, oh, this I didn't want to, so having a nice little barrier between your hand and the surface of the paper that you're working with. So moving that here and going over this way. Yeah, I remember I had wanted to describe it almost, it looked like almost like a mask to me, you know, which is how we get our ideas for masks and why they fit on the face. Oops, overshot that a little. So getting a little too chatty over here. So I'm going to go ahead and go up in the top and go from top to bottom, even though that's not the direction I necessarily went with my original drawing. Her hair goes behind her glasses. This comes, the edge of the glasses comes straight back. This edge of the hair I decided to describe with this shape. I've got another shape coming down and cut through this way, and a little highlight shape in through here. This almost winds up having a little bit of an Art Nouveau feel to it at the moment, because it's got that look of a stained glass. So this type of project would definitely lend itself really nice to moving on to a project of that nature, of stained glass. Later on in our subsequent projects, we're going to actually deal directly with the idea of where one of the selections of a style that you can work with might be the very style of Art Nouveau. So we're going to be looking at that as a design style choice later on in the semester. But nothing wrong with, in fact, there's everything right with introducing you to concepts now. Those of you who are curious will start looking into that now, saying, oh, Lolita talked about Art Nouveau on one of her videos. Oh, I'm gonna go look at it. So even though I hadn't drawn over these, I'm just going to generalize these out real quick. All of that's going to be black. That's going to be white. That'll be a mid-tone, a mid-dark tone. And same thing here. And to get something of that tortoise pattern happening in the glasses, then even though I hadn't traced over that, I knew it was somewhat redundant trying to trace over it, because I was just going to use the larger lines and really didn't want to do that double work. Okay, putting in the lines of her scarf she's got here. Putting in the line for the contours in the scarf here. Just tracing these, and there's a little bit of an organic feel to them. There's a sense of irregularity. And here is another one. I'm just going to paint that whole shape one big value and leave the rest of the areas around it light. Paint this one a darker value. And I think I will delineate here and through here, and then I'll have probably 3 values in there. And then I am going to have that triangle painted in black as part of my background. I'm just going to turn the paper here because these are really abstract shapes that I'm working with, so I don't really need to keep the image in any direction that it's actually oriented. And I'm just going to trace these shapes in this way. So I've got these bigger shapes already described in here. This one moves in, and I've got that little sideways V shape here. This is going to be a dark area. That will all be one value in through there, and another value in through here, describing this area of her head. And I'm going to get a little artistic over here. I've decided I'm going to be putting some color in the background for my one color, so I'm already planning that in this stage. And these are just going to be some gray shapes, dark gray, and then I'm going to have let the watercolor, as they say, do its thing. Let the watercolor do its thing. So I am going to let it bloom and just, again, let that watercolor do its thing. Embrace the idea of the free-flowing nature of the watercolor and play with that already there in color. So tracing the outline of the glasses here. Let's see, I've got a little bit of a, couldn't quite see the lines. Let's, if I turn them this direction, they pick up on that light I've got, and then I can see or the light picks up on them, and then I can see them really nicely and can get them traced. And again, even though you may not be able to see some of these lines really solidly yourself now, when we press them up against the window, you'll be able to really distinguish them from the graphite marks. And that's when it's going to be most helpful, is when you actually do the transfer. So they're just going over the lines that I've already established, and keeping them in that organic shape. Let's see, did I get, yes, I did get the top red, and I could see that really nice when I held that up through to the light. So moving down and taking into account the shape of these glasses again, moving around where I had previously drawn the edge of the glasses, and I am going to have this nice little shape in through here to describe the highlight here underneath the glasses, and that's part of the background, and then you can see the part of the glasses that goes to the ear. You can see that through the lens. That's what that is. And there is an edge there. The edge of her hair here. The edge of her face comes in through here. And the bottom of those glasses, get those that nice and traced out. Take it all the way up to draw that entire rim in. Going around again, holding that up. Okay, yeah, I got the entire rim. And then that was the inner rim. Now I'm going and tracing the outer rim. And those I might wind up, when I do my painting, I'm sure I'm gonna just leave those as dark lines. And even lines are shapes if you think of them as real skinny shapes. So that would explain my use of what may feel like lines, is that I needed them as real skinny shapes in order to get some of the planes isolated into a way that described form, because we still want to have a sense of form that is believable with these drawings. Part of the idea is so that we can see just how few values we can use and still get across a completely articulate idea. There's not too many ideas that are more articulate or easy to for your audience to understand than the human face, because your audience is always going to be humans, and we know what a face looks like. So that makes it a real good reason for selection in this project. Okay, I am going to just describe that edge of the hair through there, and it looks like I have most of this completed on the top. And I'm going to just take this entire edge, and this is all going to just be a white area of hair up against the scarf. And then in through here, I'm going to paint all of that one value from here to there, and then just paint a triangle in here. Isolate this strand that goes behind the other portion of strands, and then isolate this strand out too. And that is going to give me a dark area in through here. I will take that all the way back, and I'm just going to paint all of that one value, even though it's not necessarily one value there. I'm going to just push that as an artistic decision. So back to this right side up, because this gives me a better access that I'm looking for in through this area. Really nice dark part of her eyebrow in through here where it really falls into the shadow of the brow bone, and again in through here where it really falls into the deep shadow. This moves in, and I'm going to isolate that shape out and then isolate another shape out there. I think I'm going to add another shape in through here because I do see a value in here that I want to describe that I did not have drawn out, and it's okay to make adjustments like that as we go along. So this, I'm going to just make that a little less geometric and a little more organic. All right, this puts me all the way down on the cheeks, and I'm almost halfway through this drawing. And then we're going to do this entire process again by tracing this onto our newsprint using either a pencil transferring process by scribbling in with pencil all the way in the back, and or a graphite stick, and then tracing over that onto your watercolor paper to leave a copy of this by virtue of transferring the graphite you would put on the back of this paper onto your watercolor paper. Or you're going to use a method where you press it up against a window and use that as an ad lib light box. So moving right along, closing this shape off, moving this here, and then there's a slight highlight above and between the edge of her eyelid and the glasses, just moving that up there to see how much of the glasses I had drawn in. Okay, and drawing in this line of her eye, drawing in that line of her eye, moving that around, and then there is her, that's her eyelid, and then there is the outline of her eye. It's a beautiful eyeball in through here, the end of the sclera, and the idea of the tear duct. So moving that, okay, and then moving to get highlights, and those are more reflections on the glasses than anything. Checking to see if I have all of the information that I want, and I'm just looking at that in the light that I've got here. Okay, and then just closing off this shape here, drawing this shape in through here, and these are shapes that I have already previously gone through and double checked, and so these aren't just, so there we go, and then a little bit of that shape there, add in the top of that shape, seeing that I had missed it before. Still okay to make corrections or adjustments even at this level. If you see that you need to, then make it, don't be afraid to. So moving that in through there, and that's all one shape. This is going to move down there and become part of this entire shape, and that's going to be white, a highlight, a little triangular shape there, and that little teardrop shape in through here. This is all the nose bridge of the glasses being described in through here. That faint line, that's just going to be a faint line, and then this is going to be a faint line. So even though it's solid black, because I'm tracing it with marker, that does not mean that that line is going to be solid black when I paint it. That's just there so I can use it as guidelines. And then basically what we're doing is something of a paint by numbers, and we're going to fill in these shapes as values, different values from white to black, just making this look a little more organic in through here. And that's all going to be one value. Moving over here, I'm going to draw some of those shapes that I just isolated out when I realized I had forgotten them. So this is all just, I'm just going down that line just to be emphatic about how I'm going to end this border. And remember, I'm going to be putting this on my 11 by 15 paper, and so because I've chosen a portrait orientation, I'm going to use the portrait orientation when I transfer it to my watercolor paper. Keep that in mind and don't change the direction of your design when you go to do your transfer. Remember that you considered it in this orientation, so that's the orientation it needs to be on your paper. And you want to position it so on your paper that it makes a compelling design. So don't just place it anywhere on your 11 by 15 paper. Already start keeping those things in mind, even while we are only in this stage of the process. You want to think about it comprehensively. Okay, that's looking lovely. Closing these shapes off. And that moves back that direction. And in through here. Here's that nice isolation of the ear and the hair moving behind, isolating the edge of that earring, and taking it all the way down there. This is going to be one big shape, and I'm just going to take that back on itself. Have not quite decided how I'm going to handle this entirely, but I am going to take this all the way down to describe a mid-tone level of hair in there. And I am deciding now that I'm just going to give this whole area all of the same tone, and this shape that I'm drawing in here is going to be a nice lighter tone. And you can see I'm just following the general shapes that I'm seeing falling through her hair in here. Again, following the shape of that earring. And even though I'm drawing the entire earring, I may not paint the entire earring. I'm definitely going to paint those shapes. That's a decision I can make later. And so even though I drew that entire outline, that part is wider, so I'm going to divide that one shape. And that is in ink already. Go back here and finish this shape to make sure that I do capture everything. And draw this in through here. Still have not checked this shape, but I will before I actually commit to painting it. And moving that, closing that shape off. And I think I'll paint all of that one particular value, and then this too will be one value. This is going to move all the way up there. That'll shut that off, and then this will be darker in through that entire section. All right, I've got most of this drawn, but still plenty left because this is a lot of work. And okay, moving, just following these lines again. And let's see, what did I decide there? Okay, yeah, so this is the top, a darker tone, and then this is a slightly lighter tone than this, but not quite as dark as this tone here. And then this is all going to be one value in here, and I'm moving this down to here, and it meets that same value down there. This is where she has all of the hair shadows. So let's see, I want to isolate one out that's just lighter, and that's going to be slightly lighter. I could have made that smaller, and then so I think I'm going to join these two together since that would work. And then this is going to be a mid-tone in through here. this will be another mid-tone in through here, and these will all be this value in here. This I'm going to cut off here and paint this in through here a little darker to describe the roll of her cheek, how cheeks roll under. And then I will shape that off in through here as well. And so all of that is going to be just slightly darker. That's darker in through there, and move this in. And that all in there is going to be light. That describes that shadow underneath her glasses, and all of the little detail of the value shifts in through her nose, the bridge of her nose. And these are a little easier to draw for some reason for me. Move that in through there. Take this shape, oops, and that's just going to be a slightly darker value in through there. This looks like I have a couple values here, so I may or may not paint those in separate values. Once I actually get to the painting stage, I will analyze that again, because I'm not going to commit to any stroke of the paint till I've re-examined my mark. So that does go in through here. This comes down this way, and that is a little shape in through there that can be isolated, and I'm going to isolate that out there and move this back in through here. This will give this a couple different values in through here, because now that I'm looking at this, there is a nice shadow falling in through there, through this area of her face. All right, describing that curl of her lip. And there's that nice little highlight over the divot in the lip. Going back over this direction, and I have got, start describing her chin and her neck and how those relate to each other by virtue of value and shape, since this is in fact a value and shape exercise. All right, look at that, nice isolating those values, looking at those edges as I already did before, and still allowing myself a nice sense of flow, just because I can see those lines really nicely and I understand the edge value really nicely as well. Okay, moving that all the way down here, and still describing these with really nice organic lines, tracing that heart symbol that I decided to complete, but I just feel like there's a we happening here since I've got an audience of students. So even though I am making all of these decisions all by myself. All right, and just following the lines that I had drawn before and through those collarbones and the neck, I need to describe that portion of her neck with the marker. Yes, 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 and yes. Okay, moving over here, I'm going to be almost able to finish up the mark making in her neck. Got that. That's describing that contour in her neck. And really nice in through here, following where her hair, that nice line of gesture where her hair moves up against her neck. And then there's this highlight of a hair in down through here. And so I've got that lovely shape in through there. And moving this around where I can see the bottom of her chin, move that in through all the way back, and now I've got that edge describing the bottom of her chin. All right, now we're starting to use the shifts in value to describe how her chin starts turning under. And we are really drawing close to an end with this one, and then we're going to move into looking at the one with geometric lines. And even though I drew those lines in an organic form, I'm going to go ahead and shift those now. When I trace them, I'm going to use them as guidelines and make those decisions at the moment as I go. So I'm going to go ahead and make this look more like a heart shape because I like heart shapes, and I know that's not entirely organic in shape, but I'm going to do an organically shaped heart shape because that could also be considered a geometric shape if you really make the lines super symmetrical. So finishing up the contours of her nose, moving that down. That's all going to be one value in through there. And that's going to describe the turn in her nose again, where it changes planes. And that's how we had figured out where to draw these shapes, is where there is a shift in plane. Every time we see a shift in value, the darkness to lightness of a given area in this photo, that is where we are considering our lines, but we're also considering them in a very limited manner, so that way we can limit our palette down to about 9 values, no less than 5, no more than 9. That's going to be the range we're working in. And that describes the side of her nose. This is also the side of her nose, and isolate that little highlight out in through there and make sure I've got the side of her nose nice and described. And you notice that I'm making sure that my note lines actually align with the shapes in her face. So if I got the lines, the shapes a little off, when I'm going back through, I'm making sure that they align nicely with the actual shapes that I see in her face, because that's going to make my design just look that much better. And better in this case is like believable in terms of it's looking like the subject that I referenced, the girl in this photo, in this case, my niece. And all right, so I do have a few shapes over here I need to describe. I'm going to take that one all the way up to the edge of her nose. And let's see, there is a nice small shape there. And that moves all the way over to the edge of her mouth, her lip. That's going to move up. And then there are a couple values because we do have different planes in our lips. And so those are going to be described. Let's see. Okay, that looks great. and then move this around and describe that plane. Let's see, that moves down and dark, and that ends down there. This moves here and over to here. There's a highlight on her lip and through here, and that's going to be described that way. There is that highlight, and it moves around that direction, following the line of her lip. Again, as I can observe, due to the shift in values, and then describe that shape. And then here's the shape of her chin. And what I have decided to do is, again, I'm going to make a quick change here, and because I like heart shapes, I'm going to put that as part of the shape of her chin, and then isolate this out into a different value. That one's just going to be white, whereas before it was going to be this same value, which isn't quite white. And I'm almost finished here. Let's see, I did go over that, and then all I need to do here now is I'm going to add in these lovely stray strands and then describe the outline of the value shifts that I can see observable in this photograph from that describe the contours of in her shirt. So there's a couple different values in there. I'm just going to follow that trajectory of that line all the way down. And move that shape in this direction and move this shape in that direction. And then I've got my entire drawing completed. And this is what I'm going to use and trace this onto my newsprint. Again, remember, I'm going to do no shading. I'm going to take exactly this and trace it onto my newsprint, and that's going to be in a different video.